Scary Elvers is back with a special guest, Seamus Rohrer, and we're going to talk about the biggest surprises in Wisconsin football's fall camp, both good and bad, as well as connect on some breakout players from Seamus. Seamus, welcome aboard. Really good to have you. It's been a hot minute since we've had you on the show. And to set things up properly today, I gave the teaser at the top there, but you have been personally observing fall camp from field level, which I think it's pretty objectively clear has given you some really good insight as to how this squad is developing and how it's looking just a couple weeks out from the first game. So welcome aboard.
Scary. Thanks, man. Thanks for having me back. It's great to be on.
Again, as I teased, I want to talk about, and obviously we can get in bigger themes at some point today, but I want to kind of probe into the biggest surprises of camp, because a lot of people watching this, and Badger fans generally, they follow the classic sources. They watch the lockdowns. They know the good people who report on from what has been happening. And we have some of the top themes. We've heard the stuff. Eugene Hilton's having a good camp. I mean, things like that. The defense is looking good. The cornerback room is looking deep, and there's a lot of competition. But not to say that you can't say any of those things, but I'm trying to probe and to get a few surprises, things that maybe are a little bit on page two that could have some real relevance to the success of this Wisconsin football team going forward. And I'm going to start with the good things that you have seen that have surprised you in camp. It can be themes, it can be individual players, it can be coaching, it can be attitude. Kind of give you the floor here to do what you want with it. But yeah, take it away.
Well, Scary, I mean, you touched on the cornerback room. And truly, I've only seen a handful of practices, but the ones that I did see, I mean, you watch those DBs and the room is just completely different. Racking my brain for what has actually surprised me the most. And in a positive light, it's been the play of Eric Fletcher, the Oklahoma State transfer cornerback, because heading into fall camp, there's all this talk about, him versus Jameer Scott. And Robert Steeples, told reporters, it's not really a competition because they're both going to play. It's absolutely a competition because one of them is going to get more snaps than the other. But the way that Fletcher has played, man, has just really impressed me, especially because I did a pretty deep dive on him when he was signed out of the portal out of Oklahoma State, watched a lot of his All-22 film from Stillwater. And there were some things to like. I could see what Wisconsin liked. The physicality was there. He was a very willing and eager tackler, very physical in his coverage. But, man, there were just some blown coverages. Like when he was left one-on-one without safety help last year at Oklahoma State, I mean, teams would target him. As soon as he was one-on-one, teams would throw his way. He looks like a completely different cover corner. I know it's football in shorts a lot of the time. It hasn't been full pads the whole way here. But, man, the way that Fletcher's playing, and, I mean, I wrote about it pretty recently, but whether or not he wins the starting job technically, he's earned himself a role on the outside. And I think that's huge because you go back to last year, and the Badgers were just so thin at corner, especially without Nazir Forkarian, obviously. But once you got past those top two, Hallman and Deani Hill, who, left plenty to be desired themselves, there just wasn't a whole lot to work with. So I think the play of Eric Fletcher is really elevating the entire cornerback room.
Well, that's some great insight. And some of my earlier stuff, both here and in Bucky's fifth quarter, and even on the socials, I've been sort of soft hyping this cornerback room, not just because of the quality of the room and the guys in there and the upside, but in comparison to 2025. It's kind of both. I understand that this defense got better as the season went on and did end up limiting, might not be the right word, but not getting absolutely curb stomped by some really good offenses. Some of that was weather related, Eugene, Oregon, Washington, but it is what it is. But I've really been excited about this. And, to have a true competition at boundary between Jameer Scott and your guy Fletcher, what a refreshing change of pace.
I think the corners improving is huge this year, especially just with what you have to face in the Big Ten. And I think Steeples has the room to do it, man. You can flip entire positions like this these days in college. And I really think that that's what they did with this cornerback room.
Do you think there's been a change as far as attitude in the room with the new position coach? Hosa actually said something that stuck in my mind earlier in fall camp about the lack of interaction between position groups last year that has changed in 2026, which is a wonderful thing to see this year, but certainly with the benefit of hindsight now is like, yeah, why was it like that? What are you seeing from the room kind of within itself and how the guys are getting along, and then how that cornerback room is getting along with other units?
Yeah, I mean, I remember Mason Posa saying that very clearly. I was actually at that podium when he said that. Yeah, he goes, "Oh, I just wasn't really that close with the corners last year. It was hard to build a relationship with them." And so I agree. I think that is pretty telling and pretty damning. I'm not sure how much of that I want to necessarily put on the coaching, and also, Paul Haynes is still on staff. But I will say that just the demeanor of the cornerback room is a lot different. And I think I'll obviously give Steeples a little credit for that. But man, they're physical, they're nasty, they love to hit, they love to tackle. I don't know if you saw the Javan Robinson's little mic'd up video that came out the other day. He's a great leader, he's a great teammate, fifth year guy. So I just think I agree that, I agree with what you're saying. I think the attitude in that room is a lot different, but I just think it starts with the players they have in that room that embrace that physicality. They want to tackle. I mean, like I said, Fletcher, for as questionable as some of his tape was last year, he never had any qualms about sticking his nose in the dirt and making a play. But it does look quite different, and it definitely it certainly it raised some eyebrows, I think, when Posa said that. But I agree, it was very kind of damning, and I do think it looks a lot different this year.
Okay, fill in the blank. This is Wisconsin's tallest, most athletic, and hardest hitting cornerback room since when?
I mean, since I started covering the team easily, and that was what I mean, 2021, 2020, I guess. So
Back in the old days.
yeah, right. It's been a while. No,
The
I mean,
Mertz years.
definitely the most physical, fastest, longest, whatever term you want to use, they're it. I think there's a lot of promise in that room just with the athletic profile, and then, like you said too, just the personality.
Yeah. Yeah. And you never know one year to the next. Obviously, there are a lot of X factors depending on how Wisconsin does this fall that could lead to wildly different changes in that room next year. But let's say this group has a relatively successful season, keeps most of the guys together. There's so many young players in this. I'm looking at this cornerback squad as one that could be significantly better next season, even without Robinson. I just think it's if they keep improving the way we think we do, and the fact that we have these competition, this could be a real strength of the team going forward if they continue to invest the money in the room and continue to develop the guys they have. Fair?
I totally agree. And it's funny you mentioned that, actually. Yesterday I was thinking about a guy, Emilio Agard. I mean, you remember that guy? He was like a top 150 recruit in the nation out of Philadelphia. He's entered the portal this past year. Obviously, it plays for Virginia now, I believe. But
Yeah.
they haven't had a problem recruiting cornerbacks, especially under Fickell. I mean, Luke Fickell just has to tap the sign, Sauce Gardner, you know. Yeah, Fickell
Yeah.
hasn't had a problem recruiting cornerbacks. I think they're going to have the requisite talent in that room. I mean, losing like a guy like Xavier Lucas, obviously super talented. I mean, it didn't take that long for them to replace him with another cornerback who we're just as excited about in Madison and Jameer Scott, right? So
Yeah.
I think that they haven't had a problem recruiting talent to that room. So I totally agree. I think this position is set up extremely well for the future, especially with Robert Steeples in the fold, and obviously some of the recruits that they've been able to court on the recruiting
Yeah.
trail and
And,
get commits from.
and despite the fact that they may not quote unquote need the recent transfer to the Miami Hurricanes, it's also, I mean, this is guesswork, obviously, but given the NIL situation, it's very possible Wisconsin would have retained him if they had the same amount of NIL they have now back a couple of years ago. But it doesn't matter. It's water under the bridge, but it's emblematic of how different things are. Okay, so
100%.
that's one. Let's go to another one of your big camp surprises. Again, it can be a player, it can be a unit, it can be a coach. Uh, for the better, and then when we're done through this one, we'll look at a couple of things that maybe aren't going quite as well as we want them to.
I mean, we'll just go to, one of my concerns really entering the season, I think a lot of people could agree with this, was just outside linebacker. And I just wasn't sure, where exactly the pass rush was going to come from. And, watching a handful of practices like I did, my fears aren't entirely alleviated, but I will say this: the experience and size in that outside linebacker room, even from some of those bigger outside linebackers that play the jack position, right? They're sort of the bigger, like tone setting, edge setting outside linebackers are not so much the speed rusher, Sebastian Cheeks type. I'm talking more of the Justice Boone, Michael Garner players. Again, I'm not sure they're going to put up big pressure numbers, but man, those guys are huge, man. I mean, Michael Garner is 6'7", 300 plus pounds on the edge. I mean, that's like another defensive lineman. And, I do think that there might still be a little bit of a lack of pass rush juice. Although I do like what I see from the young guy, Nick Clayton. I do think Sebastian Cheeks looks good on the edge still. But just I feel better about that room in general than I did heading into the fall, just because I just see the size and the physicality and now the experience of a guy like Michael Garner and, Justice Boone, who I believe is a 6-year player and, has been in the trenches of the SEC. So that's a room that I was worried about specifically because I was questioning whether or not they could generate a pass rush.
Well, that's good to hear. And obviously, looking at these position groups in isolation doesn't tell the whole story. So when you have inside linebackers like Posa and Catalano, it's a synergy where it makes the job a little bit easier for the guys up front and the edge guys and vice versa. So, and even the big guys you just talked about, like Garner, he's and I don't think he's going to be a 10 sack guy, but he's a problem, and he requires attention that takes attention away from other people. That's just basic math. So I love to hear that. Okay, we've gotten 15 minutes in before we're going to flip to something that maybe isn't as positive. Why don't you give me, again, after watching several practices, an area of camp that you thought might have been a little better, a player, a position group that's giving you a little bit of pause right now?
But an area that, and again, not that this is another area I had a little bit of concern, but just wide receiver, man. And honestly, Scary, I'd love to get your opinion on this because it seems like, we know Hilton's having a great camp, right? And I was at the practice, I believe it was practice number 6. He had about 4 touchdowns in team periods. I mean, he looked pretty unstoppable. And I do think Eugene is poised for a great year. But to me, when you have a different wide receiver breaking out every practice, right? Because recently, now we've heard a lot about Shamar Rigby and Cash Brock recently, right? Yeah. Earlier in practice, Malachi Coleman had that big day. Eugene Hilton's been flashing. When that happens, I struggle between, do the Badgers have a deep and talented wide receiver room that is going to be a problem because there's just a handful of players that could step up on any given day? Or is it, there's a lack of consistency in this room that allows different players to shine on different days. And some guys don't show up on certain days. Something I've been struggling with. It's still a very convoluted receiver room. And I'm not going to sit here and again, Hilton has looked phenomenal in camp. I've written about it. I think he looks significantly better than he did last year. But it is something that concerns me. Just how much of that is this a deep and talented wide receiver room, or how much of it is, this is an inconsistent wide receiver room where it's someone different playing well every day. So I would love to hear your opinion about that.
I was hoping for a camp where, and it wasn't going to be like a Jonathan Taylor, the way he broke out as running back, where this phenomenon, no one really gave much credence to. Once camp was over, you can call him second string, but everyone, all the writers were winking at each other. They knew he was going to be the guy.
Yeah.
Besides Hilton, I don't know, guys. I mean, we like some of those older guys in the room as good, solid players who know how to block, but not seeing DiMaggio, for example, showing out in fall camp.
Yeah.
Zion
Kearney. Didn't see much of him, yeah.
And frankly, from what I'm gathering, Malachi Coleman consistently, although he's looked the part occasionally. I think it's probably more of they're just not where they need to be. Then there's so many good guys, you can't find the good ones.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean
when you say it out loud, it's a little, it's easier to arrive at the correct conclusion, I think.
That doesn't mean, hey, Seamus, I just want to be clear that people listening and watching this don't think I want them to get what I'm saying. I'm not saying this means that a guy like DiMaggio can't make an impact this season or can't take it to the next level. Sometimes the light just goes on, the click, maybe it's the speed of the game. Who knows what's going on here? But right now, as close as we are to opening, Notre Dame, I would have liked the room to be sorted out a little bit better, where we're talking about clear tiers. We're seeing plays being made consistently by the same guy, practice in and practice out, besides one guy. I am not writing this room off, but I am not feeling great about how it's looking going into the season.
Well, and you know what? You're right in that it's really like the intersectionality of how the defense is playing, how the quarterbacks are playing. It's also just about this offense, right? I mean, I wrote pretty recently about an overreaction from fall camp that I want to avoid, and it's going back to Eugene. Look, he's having a great camp, but he's not going to be 1,000-yard receiver. This offense is not going to produce an 1,000-yard receiver. It's just not the way that it operates, and quite frankly, how good it's going to be. But watching this offense operate live, with my own two eyes, they're going to run the ball. It's every run is practically an option for Colton. So there's going to be a lot of running the ball. There's going to be a lot of jet motion and things where all of a sudden, maybe a guy like Tyrell Henry gets the ball on a little jet sweep. And then when they do throw the ball, look, man, Joseph has the arm talent. I've seen it. I've seen it with my own two eyes, but the inconsistency is still there. He'll still miss a throw. And you have to hope that he misses a throw high on an outbreaking route and it sails harmlessly to the sideline rather than him missing high over the middle and it goes right into the free safeties numbers. Yeah. That's kind of what you have to hope, or, so it's things like that. But I just think this offense, the way that it's built, A, and the way that B, I believe it's going to perform, it's not going to sustain too many productive receivers. So I just think this passing game is going to be pretty hot and cold. I think they'll have some spectacular plays. I think there will be days where it looks really ugly. I think the floor from last year is obviously so low. I mean, worst passing offense in the nation that's not named NIU or 3 triple option schools. But I just think that the way that this offense is structured, man, that no matter who's in this receiver room, it's just not going to be able to sustain, big time, extremely productive receivers in the way that fans crave.
Yeah, that sounds rational. And again, you can't compare it to any particular offense, but the vibes it's giving me is 2021, 2022 Wisconsin teams with a more mobile quarterback. And those weren't terrible offenses, and you can argue those offensive lines were certain. And I'm not going to get an offensive line. That's for another story. I think we get guys healthy, that line will be fine. I have a great confidence in Eric Mateos. I did a list recently of my most important Badgers, and I had Kowecki top 6 because of not only his talent, but he can snap. He can snap the ball, and that's risen. That is one of those things that I cannot believe. Again, this is for another show. I just want to editorialize real quick that we are talking about snapping issues for these guys that have had a year to practice. I do not understand how and it's not. I'm not trying to be mean to these kids because there's some real talent. There's some real talent at that center position. These are talented kids with upside. This isn't rocket science, guys. Snapping is not that hard.
I know. It's funny, man. The way Mateos described it, he said, if you can throw a football, you can snap a football. And certain backup centers apparently can't throw a football.
Okay, real quick before we're gonna let you off, give me a name or two of a potential breakout player that's a little under the radar. I mean, obviously, we've talked about Eugene Hilton. That's not. I'm talking about something a little more under the radar than Hilton. Maybe one offensive and one defensive, based on what you have seen this fall. Not going to hold you to this, but guys, if they become regular contributors, you would not be surprised.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's even the running back room too, but the wide receiver room, it's deep, but it's just convoluted, right? Like it's sort of hard to tell who's going to get action where. A guy that I'll mention on offense though is Jacob Harris, the tight end. And the first practice I attended, I actually and we were pretty deep into team periods, 11 on 11s, and I hadn't written his name down once. And I actually go to write down. I'm like, man, Jacob Harris, this kid out of Bowling Green, I feel like they should get him the ball. I really liked what I saw on tape from him. As soon as I go to write it down, he makes a tremendous catch over the middle of the field, and actually starts to play well the rest of practice. So Jacob Harris is a guy who I'm really intrigued by. I think he's one of the most intriguing athletes on the team at 6'6", 270 pounds. Fluid in the open field, understands space, understands how to run routes, really soft hands, just kind of catches everything thrown his way. And just, it's almost like he absorbs the football with his huge body because, a linebacker's covering him, a safety's covering him. He's just too big. They can't get leverage. And he just the football just disappears into his uniform, it seems like. So I really like what Jacob Harris brings to the table, especially in the red zone. Obviously, they haven't had a jump ball guy in the red zone for a while. I don't know how involved tight ends are going to be in this offense because, like I said, again, just passing game wise, I think there might be games where tight ends only see a handful of targets, maybe a few targets. So it's hard to predict actually how involved he's going to be, what kind of impact he's going to make on the stat sheet. But man, Jacob Harris, and a guy that, I think if they can get him going, I think he's got some real athletic upside. And I think he looked to the part when I laid eyes on him. He looked exactly how he looked on tape. So that's exciting.
Okay, and yeah, I agree. Harris is on my most valuable list too, even in the context of I'd say it's like a deep tight end room in the sense that there's a tremendous amount of potential in that room in a way that feels a little bit different maybe than the wide receiver room. I feel there are dudes here. There are 4 or 5 guys here that can be legitimate, strong to solid Big Ten tight ends given the time, and that's good to know. Um, Anyone on the defensive side of the ball that maybe isn't on the tips of everyone's tongue as far as he's going to make this big jump, but you wouldn't be shocked if he makes some big plays and really establishes himself as someone to watch not only this year but in the future for the Badger defense.
I like this one. I like this one a lot. I'm talking Kai Bates, Florida State transfer. He's somewhat just forgotten about just because, we're talking about the competition between Scott and Fletcher, but he's going to play too. And I hardly saw him make a mistake in the 3 practices I watched. He didn't get as much attention because he's running with the 2s, but he's physical, like I've been saying with all these corners. He enjoys to just throw his body into the pile. I've seen that a couple of times. And he's 6'3", man. I just love a corner who is just tall and lanky and he was really entertaining to watch when Wisconsin would run some of their one-on-ones. Going up against guys, I forget who exactly it was. It was one of the Badgers' taller receivers. I think it might have been DiMaggio. But he's just you can't throw it over him. And fast, former top 125 recruit consensus. So just dripping with talent. And a guy that Robert Steeples also mentioned as someone who's improved significantly from spring ball to fall camp. This guy's going to play too, and he should play because you want him in your program. You don't want him to transfer. And it goes back to what you were saying. This cornerback room looks like it could be promising for a long time. And I think that's a big part of getting all these guys on the field too is, hey, you may not technically be the starter right now, but you stick around in Madison, 2027 could be your year. So Kai Bates is a guy that I loved it when they signed him, just purely based on his athletic profile and his pedigree. But man, he's a guy that, again, didn't get that much attention. It doesn't write too many headlines in practice. But I think when a corner doesn't get that much attention, a lot of the times it's like a goalie. It's like a wow, you're doing great. I didn't have to mention you. You didn't give up a big play, So Kai Bates is a guy who I really, really like.
That's great to hear, and I appreciate the detail with which you brought to that analysis. I'm just going to really quick with much less detail. Just mention a couple of mine. I feel like Rice West and Charles Perkins are 2 picks to click for me. Vastly different positions, but I think if Perk stays healthy this year, we're going to remember this guy. We're going to be very glad he came back to Wisconsin. But okay, so real quick, and let you off here. and I know this is kind of broadening out even further, but right now, with as much analysis as you've been able to do, you've seen what they've been able to do in camp, and you know what is ahead of them as far as schedule. I'd like a record prediction for this fall. We're getting close enough where I think we can do that. I've been very reluctant myself,
Yep.
but what is it? What's your vibe on this team?
Right now, my number is 7 wins. I got 7 wins right now. 7-5. I just I could see 8. I could see 6. I don't know if I could see 9, but I also don't think I could see 5. So I'm pretty firmly at 7 right now. I think there's a little room for error in either direction. I think the defense is nice, man. I think the defense is really good. I don't think they have any real weaknesses on defense besides maybe just that second Sam backer, that second just pass rush specialist. If Nick Clayton isn't ready to fully take that leap, but I think that defense is great and it doesn't have any real holes. I think the offense is a lot better, but there's serious problems, especially along the offensive line. If they don't get Mandel and Haywood back in a timely manner, I think it's going to be a lot better. But I think it's not quite fluid yet, even though the talent is vastly upgraded. So I'm looking at 7 as my number. That's been the number that's been in my head for a few weeks, and I don't think it's going to change here before kickoff.
That seems fair. I mean, I had said in my best case, worst case, most likely about a month and a half ago, before fall camp even started, 7 was where I was. I feel like fall camp hasn't made me want to go higher. I'll say that. And
Yeah,
that's just because some of the things you mentioned. I mean, offensive line was a disaster last year. It improved a little bit. It got competent as the year went on because we had some veterans like Bruner in the room but we already have a situation where we have a guard playing left tackle, which he may be really, really good, but I need to see Mandel and Haywood on the field before Notre Dame. Like they
yeah,
need reps. These are Mandel less so, but Haywood, as talented as he is, the guy hasn't played college. Like, we know what he can bring. Anyway, I'm getting into things we don't need to do, but I'm between 6 and 7. I'll probably do a final one before the season starts, but I I would give fall camp a 5 out of 10 right now, as far as my expectations. So that's not. It could be worse, but it could have been better. So that's where I am.
yeah. I agree. I think it's the injuries are going to put a damper on everything, especially just injuries to the offensive line. I mean, that's just obviously the last thing that a Wisconsin fan wants to see, especially to Haywood.
Last thing besides quarterback.
Right. Well, sure.
Yeah.
Yes, of course, obviously.
Knock
But
on wood.
I think that has definitely put a damper on things, and I think also, I mean, spring camp. I think you just tend to learn more because you haven't seen the team on the field, so you learn that a guy like Jameer Scott is the real deal, and you learn that a guy like Ryan Hopkins is the real deal. But we kind of already knew that, so there's kind of less of those really encouraging breakouts to happen in fall camp. So I'll just say that's sort of a natural part of it. I think spring ball is better for generating that hype, but I agree. I think the injuries have sort of put a damper on the hype that maybe fall camp could bring, and also maybe just the lack of sort of true X receiver emerging probably did it as well.
Yep. I think we talked about this at the time. They needed a real kind of really high floor with ceiling guy in the portal. They didn't get one. That's here we are. They have guys who have the athletic, as you know, they have the measurables like
Right.
Kearney and Coleman, but there's a reason those guys transferred. They
Yep.
weren't showing it at the college level yet, and maybe it'll click. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But anyway, Seamus, thanks a lot for jumping on. This is a good one. I'm sure you and I will talk, if not before the season, and during the season, and get our impressions of Notre Dame and things along those lines. But yeah, I'm still. I have some level of confidence for this team. I do feel better about that I felt about last year's team. No question about that. So I want to be clear here that I'm not being a doomsayer. But there's a few things I would have liked to go a little differently. But they need to get some guys back on the line, and this is going to be a better team. I feel very confident about that. So that's a good thing.
I'm right with you, Scary. And I appreciate it, man. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. We'll do it again soon.
All right. Have a good one.